Here on Wham Baam Dashcam, we've shown you over 1,000 dashcam videos sent in by our fans, and we serve up 20 new ones every week. Today we're showcasing some of the craziest clips we've ever featured, so buckle up for Wham Baam Dashcam's Worst Drivers of Colorado, Volume 1. Andre watched an oncoming driver lose control on the icy road before sliding across the median and into the path of a van. The impact knocked the car into another, bringing the total number of involved vehicles to 3. Andre pulled over, checked on the drivers, then called 911 to report the collision. He also provided copies of his dashcam footage to all the involved drivers before continuing on his way to work. Allison was delivering an Uber Eats order and had parked her Nissan Altima. Suddenly, the driver of a GMC SUV parking behind her slammed into the back of her car. It turned out the SUV driver had floored the gas instead of the brake by accident. Thankfully, the damage to Allison's Altima was minimal, so she gave the other driver a big ol' hug and reminded them to pay attention. Lee witnessed some instant justice while on his way to Colorado Springs after a ski trip. The express lane on the left is only open at certain times, and the rest of the time it's for emergency vehicles only. Another motorist decided the signs didn't apply to them and used the emergency lane to get around other traffic. But a cop wasn't thrilled with this and pulled them over, much to the delight of Lee and his wife Marisa. Lee told us they've been watching our videos since the first episodes of TeslaCam Stories, and they appreciate the production quality and narration. Thanks, you two. We're glad you're satisfied. Tyler was heading to the gym and had just pulled up behind a car at a red light. Suddenly, the driver of the Nissan shifted into reverse before backing up at an angle in spite of Tyler's honking. Tyler told us the man got out and started banging on his window, and he thinks the guy was drunk. The driver then drove away, but eventually pulled over. It took the police over an hour to respond, and they didn't make a report. Now, the other driver's insurance provider is refusing to pay the claim since there's no official police report. So Tyler's own insurance provider is paying for the repairs for now. Todd was heading home through the mountains of Colorado one night. The roads were wet and temperatures were cold when another driver sped past him before losing control. The car spun out and went off the road after the driver crashed head-on into the median barrier. Todd was able to slow down to avoid getting involved, but it was 1 a.m. and he needed to get home, so he continued. Angie's husband was driving home after picking up their puppy from puppy school. While he was waiting to turn left, he watched this week's Tesla behaving badly speed around him to run the red light. That Tesla man can't drive. That Tesla man can't drive. There's no way this can be excused as a mistake or blamed on autopilot. Angie thinks the driver was just too important to wait. She told us she and her husband have watched Wham Bam videos for years, and they even have an agreement to never watch our videos without the other. Aww. Today's first submitter was following a tractor which had slowed traffic from 55 to 25 miles per hour. The driver of an SUV in line behind him didn't like that and decided to floor it past everybody, ignoring the double yellow lines. He also ignored the turn signal of a pickup truck that was turning left, which clipped the SUV and sent it tumbling down the road. Our submitter stopped to render aid, but he told us there were no obvious injuries. When first responders arrived, he gave a statement to the police. I'm not sure where the SUV driver was headed so quickly, but I'm guessing they arrived later than they would have if they'd been a little more patient. Zachary was approaching a red light when he suddenly noticed headlights approaching rapidly from the left. A car ran the red light right in front of Zachary, who only avoided being T-boned by standing on the brake pedal. Molly was driving her 2011 Audi Q5, which she describes as her dream car, when a Chrysler turned across her lane. Molly was unable to avoid a collision that totaled both vehicles. She still misses her Q5, and even though she replaced it with an Audi A4, she told us it's not the same. She plans to get another Q5 someday. Thankfully, after a year of physical therapy, the pain in her back caused by the accident is gone, but she still gets occasional migraines. Sean watched a Nissan SUV T-bone a Chevy Colorado in Colorado. The pickup driver pulled out in front of the Nissan, failing to yield to traffic. When the Nissan hit the pickup, it spun it almost completely around. Sean stopped to check on both drivers and offered them his dashcam footage. Noah was driving along when a bunch of tree branches bundled up in a tarp suddenly fell out of the bed of a pickup truck and landed in the road in front of him. With the help of his Ford Fusion's automatic emergency braking, he was able to stop in time to avoid running over the tarp. He then drove around it in the other lane, while two guys exited the pickup and went back for the tarp. Robert was heading to Chick-fil-A on his way home from the airport when another driver suddenly merged in front of him, giving him no time to avoid a collision.
What the f?
Robert called 911, but the operator told him to make a report online since nobody was injured. As a result, no first responders arrived and no witness statements were collected. Robert told us that the other driver told his insurance provider he'd been driving along and minding his own business when Robert came out of nowhere and ran into him. With no other witnesses or reports, Robert's only option was to send the insurance company his dashcam video. Once they'd seen it, they found the other driver at fault for the collision. Brian was hauling 40,000 pounds of cargo and was cruising at the speed limit when he watched an SUV start to turn out in front of him. There was also a car in the left lane next to Brian's Freightliner, so he had to carefully swerve around the SUV as it began to pull back onto the road. The SUV then turned into a parking lot like nothing had happened. Rook was driving down a Colorado highway when he watched a BMW bounce off the median barrier several times before slowing down and stopping. Rook thinks the driver must have fallen asleep, then drove straight into the barrier instead of turning with the highway. He also pointed out the wheel that went flying before careening down the highway. This submitter experienced almost the same thing. His light was fully green when a Chevy driver turned in front of his Infiniti Q50. Witnesses called 911 and the police responded. The Chevy driver's insurance covered all repairs and medical bills. Braden was driving down Highway 287 in Colorado when he approached a notoriously dangerous intersection. He told us drivers crossing the highway have rumble strips and oversized stop signs warning them early to stop. The driver of a car made no attempt to stop as he barreled toward the highway traffic moving along at around 70 miles per hour. The pickup with camper was T-boned, sending both vehicles spinning. Neither Braden nor his passenger knew first aid, so he put on a reflective vest and placed road flares before clearing road debris so traffic could continue flowing. It took around 15 minutes for first responders to arrive. He estimates the price of the earth roamer that was hit at around $730,000 US, and he told us that fixing it will likely exceed $100,000. Christian was on his way to work when he got caught in one of Colorado's spring snowstorms. As traffic approached a red light, the driver of a Jeep forgot to give himself enough stopping distance. It looks to me like the Jeep driver forgot that four-wheel drive doesn't give a vehicle better braking. Thankfully, they were able to slide into Christian's lane to avoid hitting the stopped snowplow, and everyone went on their way. Christian sent along a shout-out for the Colorado DOT for keeping the roads clear and safe to drive on. Devin watched a Subaru driver speed through town at over 50 miles per hour in a 35 mile per hour zone right past a state trooper. It should go without saying that this sort of driving should really be taken to the track. Chris was headed to a work event with his girlfriend in their new car, a Kia Niro PHEV they'd gotten license plates for less than a week earlier. When traffic ahead of them slowed down, Chris slowed down as well. Sadly, the driver of a work van behind them failed to notice the slowdown. Even though he swerved, he still ran full speed into their Kia's quarter panel, ripping off one of the van's wheels in the impact. The van also collided with the driver ahead of them before finally pulling over. The driver was apologetic while his coworkers transferred the contents of the van to another one so they wouldn't miss their deliveries. The driver of the black pickup that stopped told Chris it didn't look like the van driver had even tried to slow down. Police responded quickly, but paramedics took over an hour. Thankfully, there were no serious injuries. After a month and a half in the shop, the insurance company totaled their vehicle. They'd sold both of their cars to afford it in the first place, and now they'll be looking for a replacement. Jeremy was on his way to work at his new job when the driver of the Toyota Camry ahead of him continued past a stop sign. Assuming she would merge onto the road, he was watching for his own opening and didn't see she had stopped. Jeremy told us he was ready to accept fault for the collision, but a week later, the Camry driver began demanding he pay to fix her car, pay for her medical bills, and even pay for her to go to therapy. When Jeremy reviewed his dashcam footage, he discovered the Camry was already heavily damaged before the impact, and the driver was out and walking around after the collision. He sent his footage to his own insurance provider. Thanks to his dashcam, Jeremy's insurance provider settled with the other driver for only $1,000 and his rates didn't increase. He told us that after this experience, his dad is getting a dashcam for his car too. Irvin was on his way to pick up his cousin Ethan from work when he noticed a pickup entering the highway rather quickly. He told us that watching Wham Bam videos prepared him to react to what happened next. Sure enough, the pickup driver started invading Irvin's lane, forcing him to the shoulder to avoid a collision. Irvin laid on the horn until the pickup driver backed off and slowed down. Thanks to his mental preparation, Irvin said he was strangely unafraid during the close call. Way to keep your cool, Irvin. Cody was driving with some friends in his Corolla and was waiting at a red light. When the crossing light turned yellow, an SUV from each direction raced the light and they struck each other head-on. While an SUV from the right entered the intersection during the yellow light to make a left turn, another SUV from the left ran the light the moment it turned red, slamming hard into the SUV from the right. Cody is first aid, CPR, AED certified, so he ran to check on the drivers. Thankfully, first responders arrived quickly and transported them both to the hospital. Cody told us they didn't seem seriously injured. He also told us our channel is the reason he bought a dash cam. Thanks, Cody. Angie's son Cameron was heading home from school when another student pulled out in front of him and he wasn't able to avoid T-boning his Ford Mustang. Cameron's Volvo SC90 was sadly totaled, but thankfully there were no serious injuries. What frustrates Angie is that the Mustang driver couldn't see Cameron coming due to parents parking in a bike lane marked "No parking anytime." Kids make mistakes, we get that. The Mustang driver shouldn't have pulled into the road without knowing if there was traffic coming. That said, shouldn't the adults know better? Even more shocking was the fact that first responders took over 40 minutes to respond to the scene. Angie sent along a shout out for Mr. A teacher who kept Cameron calm until firefighters and police finally showed up. The subject of this next video was almost certainly distracted. Nafi is an Uber driver who was transporting a rider when they both watched a Jeep in the exit lane nearly rear-end another one. Considering the Jeep was only about a car length away from the one ahead of it when the driver hit the brakes, it really seems like the driver was not paying attention. Nafi told us that he and his rider were both shocked. Jeremy was driving home when he approached an intersection where the right lane had been blocked off by cones. Suddenly, a red Ford Escape whose driver was honking the horn went barreling through the cones. Jeremy suspects this happened as part of a road rage incident, but my theory is that the Escape driver was experiencing some kind of emergency. Then again, maybe he was just trying to escape traffic.
Wham! Bam, we got a Patreon man. Please support the show.